Before we speak of remembering, we must acknowledge the forgetting. We are born carrying ancient wisdom, the knowledge of seasons, the language of dreams, the understanding that we are both particle and wave, individual and cosmos. Indigenous cultures knew this. They had ceremonies for the transitions, rituals for the turning points, elders who could read the maps of the soul. But somewhere in our rush toward progress, we lost the guidebooks. We traded the sacred for the practical, the eternal for the immediate. We created a world that celebrates the first half of life exclusively, achievement, accumulation, advancement, leaving the second half uncharted, unmapped, unlived. This is the story of that forgotten journey. This is the map back to yourself. We begin life unaware, not as blank slates, but as untouched instruments, tuned by the unseen hands of nature and spirit. Watch a child at play. Notice how they inhabit their body completely, how they speak to invisible friends, how they cry without shame and laugh without reason. As children, we don't yet know who we are. We simply are. There is no burden of identity, no shame of failure, no hunger for more. Only presence, only wonder, only being. We are still connected to the source. We remember, without knowing we remember, what it feels like to be whole. But life does not leave us untouched for long. Soon, we are named, measured, compared. We are handed the tools of survival: obedience, ambition, conformity, rebellion. We learn that some feelings are acceptable and others must be hidden. We discover that love often comes with conditions, that approval has a price. We are taught to walk in straight lines, to color within the borders of expectation, to silence the voice that whispers of magic and mystery. And somewhere along the way, we are told the unspoken rule: to belong, you must become. The great construction begins. And so we begin building. The ego is our first great construction, necessary, beautiful, and ultimately temporary, like a chrysalis that protects the transformation it cannot complete. We lay its foundation with stories others told us about who we are, and stories we learn to tell ourselves. You're the smart one. You're the problem child. You're meant for great things. You'll never amount to much. We internalize these narratives, weave them into our identity, carry them like sacred texts. We call ourselves by roles: student, son, daughter, dreamer, failure, provider, perfectionist, rebel, pleaser. These roles are not lies. They are fragments of truth. But we mistake the fragment for the whole, the mask for the face, the character for the author. We become builders obsessed with the house, forgetting it was meant to shelter a soul. The world teaches us well. It rewards the mask more than the face. The strong handshake, the confident smile, the perfect resume, the curated social media presence. We learn to perform our lives rather than live them. We chase grades, admiration, approval. We dress our ego in achievements, in relationships, in carefully constructed personas. Not always out of vanity, but because vulnerability feels dangerous, because authenticity seems impractical, because we have forgotten that we were whole before we were broken. We say, I am what I do. I am what I produce. I am what others think of me. I am my reputation. I am my bank account. I am my relationships. And for a while this works. It gives us purpose. It gives us direction. It helps us survive. It makes us feel significant. We climb ladders, build empires, accumulate experiences like trophies, but only for a while. Success in the first half of life is often measured by external metrics: salary, status, social media followers, the size of our house, the speed of our car, the prestige of our partnerships. We optimize our lives like machines, seeking efficiency over essence, productivity over presence. And many of us excel at this game. We win the races we entered, collect the prizes we sought, become the person we thought we wanted to be. But then comes the silence, the strange ache behind success, the hollowness of applause. You achieve the goal you've worked toward for years, and instead of celebration, you feel empty. You look around at your life, the career you built, the relationships you maintained, the image you perfected, and something inside whispers, "Is this all there is?" Something shifts. Maybe it's triggered by loss, the death of a parent, the end of a marriage, the diagnosis that changes everything. Maybe it's aging, the first gray hair, the body that no longer obeys, the slow dawning that time is finite. Maybe it's disillusionment, the betrayal of trust, the recognition of systemic corruption, the moment when your heroes reveal their clay feet. Or maybe it's simply a quiet moment where everything feels off, a Tuesday afternoon when you realize you can't remember the last time you felt truly alive. You have everything you wanted, but feel nothing inside. You check all the boxes that society said would make you happy, yet happiness remains elusive. You look in the mirror and the reflection blinks back, familiar but not known. A stranger wearing your face. The roles you've played so well begin to feel like costumes you can't take off. The relationships built on performance start to suffocate. The career that once gave meaning becomes a beautiful prison. Jung called this the midlife turning point, a sacred disorientation, a soul-level invitation. This is where Leonard Cohen's words ring true. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. The ego begins to crack. Not out of failure, but from a deeper truth trying to break through. The psyche whispers, softly but insistently, "Now we go inward." This is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough. The shell that protected you in the first half of life must crack open to reveal what was always inside. But first, you must be willing to enter the darkness. This is not the hero's journey of youth, the outward quest for treasure and glory. This is the hero's return, the inward journey to reclaim what was lost along the way. This is not a journey upward. This is the descent. It is not glamorous. It is not shareable. It is not for likes or followers. It cannot be rushed or optimized. It is for you, and the parts of you you've abandoned. First, you will meet your shadow, not the evil twin of popular psychology, but the repository of everything you decided was unacceptable about yourself. The insecurities you denied. I'm not actually as confident as I pretend to be. The desires you buried. I still want to be an artist, not an accountant. The rage you disowned. I'm furious about how I've been treated. The needs you labeled as weak. I desperately want to be held and comforted. Your shadow contains not just your darkness, but your unlived light. The dreams you sacrificed for security. The parts of yourself you edited it out to fit in. You will meet your inner child, not as a nostalgic image or a therapeutic concept, but as a living presence with testimony to give. This child will tell you about the moments when you learned to hide your true feelings, when you discovered that being yourself was somehow not enough, when you decided that love was earned through performance rather than presence. The child will show you where the fractures began, where the authentic self went underground, and you will grieve, not just for others, but for the person you might have been if you hadn't learned to be someone else. You will feel lost, more lost than you've ever felt. The familiar landmarks of identity will seem foreign. The goals that once motivated you will lose their power. The relationships built on your old self may not survive. But this is a sacred kind of lost, the way a snake must shed its skin, the way a tree must let go of its leaves. Because to find the self, the true self, the false self must fall apart. This is not punishment. This is preparation. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of opposites. Not choosing one side over another, but embracing the tension, finding the third way, the path that transcends the tyranny of either or. You begin to realize that you are not only the light, you are also the shadow. Not only reason, but instinct. Not only masculine, but feminine. Not only strength, but vulnerability. Not only the lover, but the beloved. Not only the teacher, but the student. Not only human, but also nature. You encounter what Jung called the anima and animus, the contrasexual aspects of the psyche. For those raised as masculine, this means befriending the feminine within, intuition, receptivity, emotional depth, the ability to simply be rather than always do. For those raised as feminine, this means reclaiming the masculine within, assertion, independence, focused will, the power to act rather than always accommodate. But these are not gender roles. They are universal principles seeking expression in every soul. And in that integration, something miraculous happens. You begin to recognize your wholeness, not as an idea or aspiration, but as a lived reality. You stop striving to be someone, and start being who you always were beneath the layers of conditioning. The paradox resolves. You become more uniquely yourself and more connected to everything else. Strathman's Maria, the individuated soul. Strathman's Maria captures this perfectly. A woman wrapped in silence, not theatrical, not loud, but radiant from within. She carries herself with the dignity of someone who has made peace with her own complexity. She doesn't perform, she doesn't chase, she doesn't need to prove anything. She is. She has met the self, that which is both personal and transpersonal, individual and universal, finite and infinite. And in doing so, she has let go of the world's illusion, not to escape it, but to finally belong to it in the deepest possible way. She represents what we all can become. Not perfect, but whole. So what happens next? After the ego bows, after the descent, after the integration, we return, but not as who we were. We return to life, but from a deeper center. The questions change. We stop asking, what do I want from life? And begin asking, what does life want from me? We stop asking, how can I be successful? And begin asking, how can I be useful? We stop asking, what will make me happy? And begin asking, what will make me whole? We find meaning in simple things. A cup of tea held mindfully, a slow conversation with a friend, the way light falls on old wood, the sound of rain on the roof. We discover that presence is more valuable than productivity, that depth is more satisfying than breadth. We learn the art of being without constantly becoming. We stop needing to impress. We begin needing to connect. Conversations become less about showcasing our knowledge and more about sharing our humanity. We listen differently, not for our turn to speak, but for the truth being revealed. We love differently, not to possess or complete ourselves, but to witness and celebrate the mystery of another soul. Our creativity returns, not as a strategy for attention or a means to an end, but as an expression of soul. We make art not to be seen, but because we must. We write not to be published, but because we have something to say. We sing not to be heard, but because the song wants to be born. We may still carry ambition, but now it bows to a deeper rhythm. We work not from drivenness, but from calling. We rest not from laziness, but from wisdom. We plan not from anxiety, but from intuition. The paradox of acceptance and action. We become agents of change precisely because we stop trying to change everything. We influence others by becoming more ourselves. We heal the world by healing our own wounds. We find our power by surrendering our need to control. In the second half of life, we become what the world needs most, elders who have done the work. Not elders by age alone, but by integration. The wounded healer. Having descended into our own darkness and returned with light, we can now serve as guides for others making the journey. We become wounded healers, not because we have all the answers, but because we have lived the questions. We can sit with others' pain because we have made friends with our own. We can offer hope because we have walked through despair and found it was not the end. We learn the gift of boundaries, not walls to keep others out, but fences to keep our energy in. We say no more easily, not from selfishness, but from self-knowledge. We understand that our time is finite, and we choose more carefully how to spend it. We practice the great art of the second half of life, letting go. Letting go of the need to be right. Letting go of old grudges. Letting go of roles that no longer serve. Letting go of the illusion of control. And in letting go, we discover what remains, the irreducible essence of who we are. Generativity, the gift to future generations. We become generative, not just procreative, but creative in service of the future. We mentor not to create mini-me's, but to help others find their own path. We share our wisdom not as dogma, but as invitation. We plant trees whose shade we may never enjoy. In the second half of life, death becomes our teacher rather than our enemy. Not the morbid preoccupation with dying, but the life-giving awareness of mortality. Knowing that our time is limited makes each moment precious. Knowing that this conversation may be our last with this person makes us more present. Knowing that this day will never come again makes us more grateful. We begin to practice dying while we're still alive. Dying to old identities, dying to outdated dreams, dying to the need for permanence. And in each small death, we discover what cannot die: love, consciousness, the web of connection that links all things. We realize that our greatest legacy is not what we accomplished, but who we became. Not the monuments we built, but the lives we touched. Not the wealth we accumulated, but the wisdom we embodied. So if you feel like your world is falling apart, if your old goals no longer inspire you, if the applause feels hollow and the mirror feels foreign, if you wake up wondering who you've become and how you got here, if success feels like failure and achievement feels empty, maybe this is not the end. Maybe this is not a crisis. Maybe this is not a breakdown. Maybe this is your invitation, the invitation to the second half of life, the invitation to depth over breadth, the invitation to being over doing, the invitation to soul over ego. This is where wisdom begins, in the recognition that you are not who you thought you were. You are not your resume. You are not your bank account. You are not your social media profile. You are not even your relationships. You are something far more mysterious and far more magnificent. A unique expression of the universe attempting to know itself through your individual experience. In the second half of life, the soul becomes the compass. The mask is gently set aside. The ego, no longer needed to defend, learns to serve. You stop running from yourself and start running toward yourself. You stop trying to be who you think you should be and start discovering who you actually are. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too old, too late, too damaged, too anything. You are becoming. And there is something inside you, older than fear, wiser than logic, more beautiful than success, more enduring than failure, waiting to be remembered. This is the great work of the second half of life, to become who you were before you learned to be who you thought you should be, to remember what you forgot in the rush to survive, to reclaim what you sacrificed in the name of acceptance, to integrate what you scattered in the effort to fit in. This is not a destination but a direction, not a problem to be solved but a mystery to be lived, not a goal to achieve but a grace to receive. The second half of life is not about perfection, but about integration. Not about having it all together, but about holding it all. The light and the shadow, the joy and the sorrow, the questions and the silence. Take a breath. Feel your feet on the earth. Feel your heart in your chest. Feel your spirit in your body. You are here. You are alive. You are enough. The journey continues. The mystery deepens. The love expands. And somewhere in the silence between who you were and who you are becoming, the self is waiting. Patient, eternal, already whole. Welcome to the second half of life. Welcome home. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.